Stanley Illebrun, hanged June the 21st, 1940. At 1:15 a.m. on Friday, June the 21st, 1940, Stanley Illebrun, aged 21, was hanged at the Regina jail for the October 16, 1938 murder of his cousin and employer, Herbert John Schill, 36, on a farm north of Lebret, Saskatchewan. Stanley worked as a farmhand and had gone with his employer to milk the cows on the evening of Sunday, October the 16th, but returned to the farmhouse alone, claiming that Schill had gone off with another man in a car. When her husband failed to return that night, Mrs. Schill called the RCMP the next morning, but the missing man was not to be found until June the 7th, 1939. Reacting to a comment by Mrs. Schill that her husband and Illebrun had once buried a dead colt under the huge manure pile behind the barn, the police decided to dig it up and found Herb's body 4 feet down. He had been shot once in the head with the .22 rifle kept on the farm for killing vermin. Stanley was arrested at his parents' farm near Gull Lake, Saskatchewan, and in a written statement admitted to shooting Schill during a heated argument. Their relationship had soured over a lack of days off, unpaid wages, and because Schill had reprimanded him over the attentions he was paying to a young woman who had been working on the farm. The quarrel on the night of the murder started over Illebrun's refusal to milk 2 difficult cows, a task he claimed Schill always gave him while never taking a turn himself. The men came to blows, and Stanley ran to another part of the barn, where he found the .22, loaded it, and fired. He claimed he only wanted to frighten Schill, but instead found he had killed him, and in a panic, he buried the body under the manure pile. The main issue at Illebrun's trial was whether his slaying of Schill was premeditated or an act of manslaughter committed in anger during the quarrel. Stanley would be tried for murder twice, as the guilty verdict at the first trial was overturned on appeal, only to find himself guilty of murder a second time and sentenced to hang. In one of the written statements Illebrun made at the time of his arrest, he had stated, quote, "I shot him once in the cow barn, and he fell. He died, and I dragged him out to the manure pile and buried him." End of quote. One can only imagine the impact these words would have made on the jury. While awaiting execution, Illebrun befriended another condemned man, Nelson Sammy, whose case has already been covered on this channel. And now they are buried near each other in unmarked graves in the potter's field of the old Regina Cemetery. The primary sources for today's video are the chapter The Case of the Missing Farmer in Frank W. Anderson's Outlaws of Saskatchewan, the chapter Sour Milk in Sour Milk and Other Saskatchewan Crime Stories by Barb Pakulik and Jana G. Pruden, and the online article The Murder of Herbert Schill by Melanie Cole, and available at melaniecole.com. Today's footage shows the Potter's Field in the old Regina Cemetery, where Stanley Illebrun is buried in an unmarked grave, while the music was Aftermath by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. If you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing to The Gallows, where we explore Canadian murder cases which ended on the scaffold. And remember, if you're born to hang, you'll never be shot. Cheers.